Today, what I thought we would use this opportunity for is to really describe what kind of policy we believe will be good to help us move forward. And not only good for the renewable energy industry, but good for everybody in Arkansas. Good for business, good for the utilities, and good for ratepayers. And it's going to be pretty easy to do if we have the right tool. You know, it's hard to drive a nail with a pair of pliers, but if you've got the right tool, we can do this. I came across this slide. I thought it was pretty interesting. It's renewable energy, non-hydro renewable energy installations that existed around the country in 1970 and what they are today. And you can see that in 1970, the Southeast region was a leader in renewable energy because of our biomass and all of the timber operations. That was a no-brainer to co-generate or put power in. And of course, that's when PURPA came along, 1978, and a lot of these facilities were able to sell their power back to the utility at avoided cost. But you can see that the world is changing, and there is a lot more renewable energy being developed in the country now. So it can be pretty confusing. There are lots of policies out there. Some of them work with other policies. You kind of put a couple of policies together and you come up with something. Some of the policies have been around for a long time. Some of them are newer approaches. But you can see that there's renewable portfolio standards. There are some standards that carve out for distributed generation, third-party agreements. We can all read, I won't read down through all those. You'll see there's some loan programs, you know, being able to get financing for renewable energy development is key to the game. So you've got to figure out how that's going to work. How can you make that work? Property tax incentives, the PACE deal is kind of a property tax oriented thing. Public benefits funds, sometimes they say, in fact, Georgia made history last year, I believe it was, when they announced that they were going to be set aside ratepayer dollars to build a nuclear power plant. Most of the time, I believe the dollars come in after the plant's built. You guys in the commission can probably keep me in line there, but it was kind of unusual that the commission in Georgia decided to set the funds aside for something they were going to do as opposed to something that they were repaying capital investment on. Tax credits, of course, of all of those policies, Arkansas has net metering. And we've had some limited rebate programs and things that have been very successful. But basically, we have net metering to develop renewable energy in Arkansas. A lot of states have gone to a renewable portfolio standard. This is a requirement that the utility either install or purchase a given percentage of their energy from renewable energy, usually by a given date. And so you can see a lot of states have gone in this direction. Back in the 1999 session, when the legislature was wrestling with utility deregulation, I brought to the legislature a 5-point energy plan that was not more about how we try to get competition into the market, which, as we know, that the dereg bill was later repealed once we found that 1 kilowatt hour of energy had been bought and sold about 30 times out in California. The Enron thing blew up. We realized how complicated a deregulation scheme can be. But one of the issues in my 5-point plan in '99 was an RPS, a renewable portfolio scheme. At the time, there were only about 6 states, I think, that were doing it. I've never brought that back because I realized after the fact, not only was it a stick as opposed to a carrot, it just seemed un-American in some respects to say, we're going to make you do it this way. So I knew that we had to have some other policy. And it was right about that time that the Germans were beginning to experiment with a feed-in tariff. So the key difference between a feed-in tariff and a portfolio standard is that a portfolio standard sets a quota, and a feed-in tariff sets a price. Now, if you're a banker, would you say you want a bushel of potatoes, or would you say, I want to buy potatoes for 50 cents a pound? You want a known element here. It limits customer choice. If we have a portfolio standard, there are a lot of states around us that have good renewable energy generation resources. And utilities may simply choose to buy those renewable energy credits from outside of Arkansas. I'm very pleased to see that SWEPCO entered into over 400 megawatts worth of renewable energy credits from Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas wind power. And they said that they anticipated that ratepayers' rates would actually go down about 1/10 of a penny because they had entered into buying that renewable energy wind. The problem is the ratepayers that are paying SWEPCO, those dollars that they're buying that energy with, those are Arkansas ratepayer dollars that are going out of state. So we need to figure a way to keep those ratepayer dollars here. And, you know, there are a lot of tax credits for the installation of renewable energy. Those guys are getting those tax credits. We're not keeping those tax dollars here in Arkansas. And it costs more per unit. Now, I gave a few examples. This slide's a little bit old, but the evidence is overwhelmingly clear that a feed-in tariff costs much less per energy unit delivered than a portfolio standard. There are now almost 70 countries and several states that have feed-in tariffs. And I serve on a national steering committee to develop feed-in tariffs, and some of the other states, Oregon already has an RPS, but they contacted me once we were on a webinar together and said, Bill, tell me what you're doing in Arkansas. Can you send us what you've got? Because our RPS is not really working as well as we would want. And I was later invited to sit in on a state level conference call with them to describe how what we're working on is basically an RPS that uses a feed-in tariff as the tool to achieve the job.